Okay, guys, I'm back to render my verdict on Doctor Who Season 12, and I'm going to do that by taking a look at quite a number of rotten reviews on Season 12, Episode 3, otherwise known as Orphan 55. And I told you guys on my last couple of videos that I hadn't made my mind up yet about whether Doctor Who Season 12 was worth watching, and coming at this from a normie's point of view, not a long-time Doctor Who obsessive fan, just somebody that was casually interested in Doctor Who, I can say that, yeah, I'm pretty much done with Season 12. I won't be continuing it, and I'm going to have to say that it deserves to be rotten. Now, if we take a look at Season 12, the overall audience score, it's now at 7%. With 455 user reviews. This number, as I showed on my previous video, there's a problem with this number. This score was definitely reset by somebody, whether it was deliberate or not. It got reset. The tomato meter went up a point from 81 to 82%. So another critic joined in with a positive review. Yet a lot more people, a lot more audience reviews came in and kept this down at 7%. It was 6% at one point, but it went up to 7. Not a whole lot to say there, except I think the last time I looked at the audience score on my last video, we were around 40, 50 audience reviews. Well, we're at 455, and it only went up to 7%, and I'm going to have to say, I can agree with that 7%. I think it's fair, and it's for a lot of different reasons. I think that Doctor Who, this is nothing like the Doctor Who that I saw even in the Peter Capaldi seasons. I saw some of those episodes. I wasn't really that impressed with Peter Capaldi's Doctor Who. My favorite, of course, is David Tennant, and I still say that, you know, Jodie's version of Doctor Who is simply a David Tennant impersonation. It's a rather good impersonation, but it doesn't strike me as being unique in any way. I'm not sure how she would apply herself to Doctor Who. From her point of view, I don't know, because it is straight up just an impersonation of David Tennant, and I like David Tennant's Doctor Who. It's my favorite, but it's a little off-putting seeing an impersonation of it. But that's not the biggest reason I think there's you know, a serious problem here. I think it's the wokeness. The wokeness is definitely there, and I can see it definitely in this Orphan 55, episode number 3 of season 12. It's right off the bat obvious that only the female characters make decisions that affect the plot. Only the female characters are in positions of authority. Only the female characters are not complete idiots. All the male characters, the male adult characters, are either comic relief idiots or they are somehow incompetent in their jobs. In particular, in this episode, we have an engineer who is completely incompetent, and his young son is actually much smarter than him and very much a competent engineer, whereas the you know, the older engineer male, he's completely incompetent. And of course, the regular sidekick, the white male character of Jodie Whittaker's Doctor Who, he's completely incompetent and useless in this episode, as he mostly was in Spyfall 1 and 2. And now with this third installment under my belt, I can say that yeah, the wokeness is just off the charts, and the preachiness is off the charts. This is a environmental, global warming type message episode. And I'm not talking about a subtle message here where, you know, there could be a subtle message in the story. No, no, no. There is that subtle message in the story, but in case any of the audience members might have missed that subtle message, at the end of this episode, there is quite a long monologue from Jodie Whittaker's character where she just flat out says that it's all about global warming and we have to get our acts together or we'll be wiped out as a civilization on Earth, and etc. And it goes on for quite a while, and she's literally telling the other characters in the TARDIS this speech, and she's basically telling it to the audience in case the audience didn't already get all the references to global warming earlier. And the plot's a complete fail. The plot doesn't make sense. In fact, in this episode, Doctor Who, all the actions she does, they have nothing to do with the resolution of the plot. They don't accomplish anything in the story. Yeah, she does things, but she does things that have no bearing on anything. It's like a lot of different disconnected things have been put together, and none of them add up to any kind of resolution. And it's got a whole lot of logical plot fail in it. You have a story in which Earth in the far future is completely contaminated and poisoned by carbon dioxide, and the remnants of humans that couldn't escape to Earth, they're like the Morlocks out of the Time Machine story. They're the monsters that are left over on Earth, and they breathe carbon dioxide and they exhale oxygen. And there's a scene in which Jodie Whittaker explains this, and she also has to preach to the audience about how plants, produce oxygen, and that's what these creatures do. They take in carbon dioxide and they produce oxygen, and yet this science is actually wrong the way she presents it, so it's a logical and scientific fail. For an episode that wants to preach and it wants to be some kind of strange, woke Saturday morning or after school special type of thing for the kids, it's actually got inaccurate science in it. For a preachy episode, which is kind of ironic. I mean, if you're going to do a global warming type episode, at least you should probably get the science right, but they actually get the science wrong, but they're still preaching to you that we have to just do something about the global warming. The characters in this, they're pretty much useless. There's like a little contrived romance with this new Bella character who's a black British girl. I don't know the actress. I'm not familiar with her, but she's actually the girlfriend in this episode of the Ryan character. And she's like, I guess she's the inciting thing in this whole story. Basically, she is a character who has been neglected by her mom. And because she's been neglected by her mom, her absentee mom hasn't sent her Christmas cards and hasn't had any contact with her for many years. She hates her mom so much that she's willing to bring a bomb to this holiday resort spa and just blow up everything and everyone. And I guess she's going to murder everyone, including her mom, just because her mom doesn't want to, keep in touch with her. It's complete nonsense. It makes no logical sense. It's not believable, and there's like a contrived romance in this between the character of Ryan and this new girl, Bella, and it doesn't make any sense. There's a scene in which the doctor tells Bella and Ryan to just sit down and suck their thumbs, and this is supposed to cure some type of computer virus that they have been infected with. And it's very strange to see this. There's some kind of messaging going on here, but I don't know what it is. Maybe it's somebody that's British would know what the messaging is. But yeah, two of the characters are instructed to sit down and just suck their thumbs, and that's what they do. A lot of weird stuff. There's kind of a message about marriage in this. There's a old married lady, and she's looking for her husband that's been abducted by these creatures. And I don't know what to make of it. They're kind of the husband. The husband actually asked the wife to please do him a favor and kill him. It's really bizarre. I don't know what to make of this. There's a whole lot of messaging crammed into this, but the plot is so illogical that even the messaging kind of fails. Just chalk it up to some kind of ham-fisted environmental global warming message, and the plot really, it doesn't make sense. The characters are doing things, but, the doctor in this, at one point, she kind of knows that this Bella character is the one that started all the trouble and that she has brought bombs with her to bomb this resort. But nobody tells the doctor this. Like, this character of Bella and the doctor are separated, and Brian does know that Bella is responsible for all the stuff that's happening, that she has sabotaged the shielding of this spa. But the doctor doesn't know this, yet somehow she does, and it's very strange. Like, there's a lot of logical plot fails in this. People know things they shouldn't. The doctor and another character kind of go on a little side adventure together, fighting against one of these creatures, and it doesn't add up to anything. It has no relevancy to the plot. Like, nothing the doctor does in this actually moves the plot forward. She's just doing stuff, and other people are doing stuff, and none of it actually adds up to anything, but they make sure to put the big global warming message at the end of it. While I was watching this, I knew I was being preached to, but the plot was so all over the place that, the messages, although I knew they were there, I wasn't sure what the messages were beyond just the global warming. And it was very cheap. You could tell that they added a lot of dialogue and stuff in post-production by the way it was edited together. And these creature effects, it looks like they tried to make a type of alien creature, like a ripoff of Alien, where you have dark corridors and you just see the alien's teeth all slimy, and they tried to do that, but it failed because I guess they just didn't have the budget. So you're looking at like a low budget ripoff of stuff from the Alien movie, the first one, and Aliens, and also a low budget ripoff from the Time Machine with the Morlocks. And they're just putting all the stuff in there. And whoever directed this, I guess it's this Chibnall character. It's a complete fail. And thanks to this episode, I can render my verdict where I can say that this Season 12 definitely deserves to be rotten. Again, I'm going to say I never saw Season 11, but I'm going to take other people's word for it. And, I'm going to pretty much assume that Season 11 is just as bad as this. But anyway, let's look at actual audience. Well, first let's look at IMDb. Let's not get ahead of myself, but let's look at IMDb just to make sure there's not anything going on with Rotten Tomatoes, because like I said, the first time before the score was reset, this actually had a 32% on the audience score. Now we're at 7. So let's just check IMDb for this episode. And wow, Orphan 55, it's down to a 4.9 out of 10 on IMDb with almost 1,000 reviews. Wow, that's quite a drop, because on IMDb, as I showed in my earlier video, Spyfall 1 and 2 are like 7.2 and 7.4 on the IMDb system, which is kind of respectable, better than I judged them to be. Now, with the third episode of Season 12, it just went right off the cliff to a 4.9. Yeah, so obviously it's not just Rotten Tomatoes. Obviously the sentiment out there is correct. This thing is a complete disaster. They probably, I would expect that when episode 4 comes out, that a whole lot less people are going to be watching it, because like me, I gave this a chance. I sat through 1 and 2 thinking 3 might turn it around, and it actually went off the cliff. So let's take a look from 5 minutes ago. We have a half-a-star review. Keep your effing politics out of my entertainment. So again, it's the wokeness. I read a whole lot of woke reviews last time, and it looks like I'm going to read a whole lot more. Half a star. Wokeness, or too much of it, is really bad for business and needs to stop. Narratives and storylines do not make sense. And finally, bad for 99% of audience that don't care about forced wokeness. Critics and media needs to wake up and stop pushing this artificial social constructs that has nothing to do with reality of the world. Half a star, 9 minutes ago. Cancel it already. Woke BBC is getting tiresome. Doctor Who will never be the same. Time to move on to Big Finish and forget the Chibnall era happened. I think some of these I've read before. So rather than just going through and reading them all, let's just click through a few pages and verify that, yes, well, there's a 5-star, absolutely loving it. I don't believe you. I think I've read all these before, even though it says a lot have been added since the last time I looked. I don't think they're here. I think I'm seeing reviews I read before. So let's go back to IMDb and let's actually take a look at, the top, this top review here. That's, I don't know if it's highlighted or whatnot, but it's the one they show without having to click on see all reviews. They have rated this, I believe it's a 6 out of 10, but let's take a look at this. This episode sees the Doctor and her fellow travelers teleported to Tranquility Spa when Graham gets a winning coupon in a vending machine. Okay, this is a synopsis. So let's like skip the synopsis and read down to the second paragraph. After a decent opening double episode story, things get a bit disappointing. I knew things weren't going to be good when we were introduced to Hyphen, the squirrel girl. The name, the spelling, the fact that she looks like a squirrel were all more than a bit too silly. Yeah, there's a character that kind of runs this spa resort on this planet, and she's like the receptionist or whatever that greets visitors or tourists, and she looks like Squirrel Girl, like some kind of Squirrel Girl character from a comic book, and her name is Hyphen. I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but it is kind of weird. But let's continue. Then we get a father and young son team of mechanics who have bright green hair for no obvious reason. Yeah, there are a father and son team of mechanics. Well, the father's supposed to be some kind of engineer, and the son is his son that said that, you know, his mom was too boring, so he often went to work with his dad. And yeah, they have green hair, like straight up like dyed green hair, like they're from a Halloween party or something. And the dad, the engineer, he's shown to be totally incompetent, and his son's a genius and knows more about engineering than he does. And he actually gives up at one point in the story and actually says, I can't save you. I need to get my son. And then the son comes along and looks at the stuff that the dad couldn't comprehend fixing and just says, well, it's a good thing I'm here. Get out of my way. And then the little kid actually wires everything up, this teleporter, and fixes everything. And the dad's completely incompetent. I mean, completely. And he's the engineer. Obviously, they're trying to get the message out that even the kids are smarter than the male characters. So they succeeded in that, I guess. I don't know what the green hair thing is either, but it was a big feature on those two characters. A little bit weird. I don't know if that's like, you know, they just dyed their hair green, or that's their species out there somewhere. They all have green hair, but otherwise they look like regular humans. Let's read on. Let's see. On the plus side, the dregs, which I assume were at least partly inspired by the Morlocks from the classic The Time Machine, were suitably scary. Yeah, they're called dregs. They're like slimy humanoid characters that are the remnants of humans that survived on Earth after all the oxygen was replaced with carbon dioxide. And they're like the Morlocks out of The Time Machine, so they've got that part right. Scary? No, because it's like they didn't have the budget, so they would show like one or two shots of them standing there flexing and roaring, and then the rest of it was just like you saw close-ups of their faces and jaws, like straight up out of the 1979 movie Alien, so that they didn't have to show much of them. And then they're just all slimy, dripping stuff like the alien creature, and that's supposed to be scary, and it wasn't scary. It was just a ripoff from Alien and Aliens. I guess to save money, because for some reason there's plenty of money available to like put like you know, sets, like put sci-fi sets in there. There's plenty of money for like I don't know, woke messaging, but there's no money for like, you know, creature effects or anything. I don't know. I don't know how that works. I'll just say that on the budgetary side, you know, you're in this desert wasteland, and you could tell that they didn't have much money to make a desert wasteland. So they had some kind of studio set, and then when they had to be outdoors, they were filming in some kind of grassy area in a wooded area, but there couldn't be trees, so they tried to obscure the trees with a fog, and you could still see like regular green pine trees if you looked through the fog in the background. Otherwise, it was supposed to be a desert, and you could just tell by the way it was shot that they didn't have the budget. But there's budget for like all kinds of woke messaging. But anyway, let's read on. The big reveal about the identity of Orphan 55 and the dregs is unlikely to surprise too many people. Yeah, it didn't surprise me. It didn't surprise me that we were on Earth. I had a suspicion. And also, it didn't surprise me later when it was supposed to be some kind of reveal that the dregs, these creatures, were what was left of the humans. Because earlier in the story, we had had dialogue which was kind of preachy that said that, yeah, it happens all the time on planets. The elites, they just want to do what they want to do, and then they run off and leave everything all fucked up, and then the regular people get left behind, and this happens all the time with these elites. And it right away they were preaching to you about some kind of message about industrial, I don't know what you want to call it, like the industrial titans or whatever, the rich people of our society, they always like fuck everything up and then they just run off and they leave us all stuck with a polluted planet. And there was some preaching right from the beginning, so I suspected that they were going to reveal that this was on Earth somehow, and sure enough they did. Let's see. This episode has an obvious message about protecting the environment, so the doctor's concluding monologue feels more tedious than necessary. Yeah, it was already pretty much all through this, the message about the environmentalism and the global warming, and yet they had to put this monologue at the end to drive it home just for the extra dense audience members that might have somehow missed all this messaging in the rest of the episode. So yeah, and it was really cringy. Like, this monologue went on for a while. It was literally just preaching about global warming, and then it just cut right to credits after this preaching speech about global warming. So yeah, it's not like it was just my opinion that the speech was about that. It was straight up a message speech about global warming. I don't recall anything like that in the Doctor Who episodes I had seen back in the day, season 2, season 3. But wow, it's just straight in your face now. The cast is solid enough. I particularly liked Laura Fraser's performance as Kane, the resort's operator. There are a couple of scientifically questionable moments. How are fires burning when an alert is saying the oxygen is down to 1% and there is no indication of what the hordes of dregs described as apex predators might have eaten before they broke into the resort? Yeah, these dregs, like, we know that we're told that they breathe carbon dioxide, but there's no food out there. They're living in a wasteland, so what do they eat? And then on top of that, you're in these tunnels and they're moving through these tunnels, and it's said that the oxygen level has dropped to 1% or less, yet there are fires burning all over the place. A lot of science is wrong, and even when, like I said, female Doctor Who is doing some preaching, some scientific preaching, it's incorrect science. It really is. And so it's kind of bad when you can't even get your science right when you're doing a preaching thing in your own stuff. I mean, that's really bad. It's like, who directed this? I don't know. Apparently he doesn't put much effort into any of the stuff, because I've read articles now online that have been brought to my attention that the director of this Chibnall, he does not read online criticism. He doesn't check into any of it at all. He doesn't take any feedback from fans. He just does what he likes to do to please himself, and he admits this, that he straight up does not consider what feedback he might get. Yeah, that's working out real well, isn't it? Because I guess the only feedback he's going to get is when nobody ends up watching his program, and then he can, I guess, blame somebody else. I don't know who he's going to blame, but I'm sure we're going to find out. I'm sure YouTubers out there are going to tell me who he's going to blame, because if this whole season goes down to where there's nobody ending up watching the show after all these years, like, he's not going to take the blame himself. He's surely going to push it off onto somebody, and I can't wait to find out who that is. Might be somebody like me, right? Let's see here. Overall, I don't think it is as bad as some reviews suggest, but I won't deny I was a bit disappointed. Yeah, they're being very charitable here in their 6 out of 10 star review. If I go down and I click on, let's see all 21 user reviews, so there's actually 21 user reviews, although it says there are 900 people that gave it a star. So I don't know exactly how that works on IMDb, but let's go through and just check the headlines. 1 out of 10, swift return to the S11 standard of writing. So they're saying it went straight back to shit and season 11 was shit. Okay, 3 out of 10, thumb-suckingly bad. This was terrible. Plain and simple, this was the worst episode since the show made a return. Not only are the viewing figures tumbling, but the quality is as well. It pains me to slate this show, but this was awful. The story was dreadful. The TARDIS crew were terrible. And as for the thumb-sucking moment, I couldn't believe my eyes. Yeah, 2 of the characters, Ryan and Bella, were just sitting there sucking their thumbs, and at the end they bid farewell to each other on their little contrived romance, and they both put their thumbs in their mouth to, like, show their romantic bond with each other or something. Like, I don't know how that's supposed to be romantic, but that's how they saluted each other, by sucking their thumbs before they had to part ways because of their very quick and contrived romance they had together. Anyway, at this rate, the show will be dropping into the 3 million viewer numbers. Worrying signs. People give feedback with the remote controls, an epic fail. I am worried about the backlash after this. Um, yeah. The minor positive, the alien creatures, I liked the design of them, but considered the elaborate goings on, they were rather primitive. Their appearance was curious. Crayons and spam sums it up nicely. We get more preaching. Ryan, you are the worst companion of all time. You make Dodo look like Sarah Jane Smith. That's not the fault of his acting, but the poor guy hasn't got a chance with the script he's working with. They are deliberately making him useless, clueless, gutless, and dismal. I watch Country File each week while I wait for this, and genuinely the number of swans in that pond was more interesting than this trash. So this is a regular watcher of the BBC, and they're saying this is complete trash. I'm not a regular watcher of the BBC, but I can only imagine if there's so much preaching in this, I wonder if like this is normal for a BBC show. I mean, even in a BBC show with a great plot and good characters, is the preaching actually normal? I don't know because I don't watch BBC programming. This is about the only thing I've watched. Other than I have watched Sherlock, and I have to say that's fantastic, even though that's rather dated now. It's fantastic. But anyway, let's move on. 2 out of 10, worst Doctor Who episode. 4 out of 10, can the Doctor time travel back to 2005, please? Yeah, I kind of agree on that. I'd rather go back to the first 3 seasons of this Doctor Who franchise, and the first 3 modern seasons that started in 2005 are far superior to this. This is just straight up boring and nonsensical, and plus you have the preaching on top of it. 3 out of 10, Seeds of Hope extinguished. Very poor even by the substandard efforts of last season. All written to deliver one message that most tuning into Doctor Who, a sci-fi program, are trying to escape from, especially the way it is lectured at the end. Current affairs and agendas are top of the list, now superseding story and plot, and will likely be the final nail in the coffin of this once great program unless sackings happen sooner rather than later. If more effort was made to keep the story believable, then maybe the less than subtle preaching wouldn't seem so bad, but sadly, no, just plain terrible. Well, in season 3, it does look like, from my normie point of view, that they really have just put the characters in there for diversity, and they don't really want them to do anything or to do anything with them. They just want them to be there to look like there are these diverse characters. And yeah, the plot, there's not a whole lot of attention to that. The plot logic, not a whole lot of attention to that. It's just like whoever this director is, Chibnall, he is going through the motions, and the whole point of it is just to get the preaching, the message out there, and the message is everything. And basically, I guess if he could just get all these characters to just stand still for 35 or 40 minutes, and he could get away with them just standing there and talking to each other, that would like save a lot of money, and he could still get his message out. But it's probably not that he can get away with that. So he's got to make these very superficial plots that don't mean a whole lot, where nobody really does anything and characters don't do anything except go through the motions, so that he can get the preaching out. And it seems quite obvious to me. This is all about delivering some kind of message. Doctor Who is given the CBeebies treatment. That's comparing it to another BBC show. 5 out of 10. It's so bad it makes you laugh, but I wouldn't call it so bad it's good. Yeah, it's not so bad it's good. There's nothing here that, like, if I had gone into this drunk or half drunk or whatever, I wouldn't have laughed at any of this. I didn't laugh at anything. It was just dumb and boring. It's not one of those things that you can just, get inebriated and make fun of this and have a good old time. There are movies like that. I've talked about a number of them. This is not one of those things. I'm sorry, it's not. 1 out of 10. Who heading for TV oblivion? Last week there were a few tiny signs that this mess was perhaps trying to reverse the polarity. Sadly, we are soon back to normal for this train wreck of a Series 12. Whittaker showed a glimpse of a Doctor Who for a few moments last week, but is now back to full-on dribbling idiot mode. Her inane babbling and talking to herself nonsense of a performance is killing this show. I think I have mentioned this before, but she can't act. This is just one of the many problems that beset this awful excuse for Doctor Who. She and the 3 idiots go on a holiday and find it worse than Butlins as monsters are attacking the guests. It has to be said that these particular monsters were actually really bad blokes in plastic suits with non-movable mouth parts, and they made the effects of the early black and white Doctor Who seem like magic. It roared a lot but was laughable, and I've seen more frightening gas bills. Another three-idiot top-heavy show and a story that a 2-year-old would disown, a bit of preaching at the end, and one of the idiots traumatized, and then it's on to the next disaster. Yeah, it's very much like the plot of a Saturday morning cartoon I would see like 30 or 40 plus years ago when I was a kid in the United States. We had Saturday morning cartoons, and they would have plots like this, except that was made for little kids and they were cartoons. This felt very much like that, and it felt like it had that kind of budget too. Like they say, the guys in rubber suits are the monsters. They roar a lot. You see them in a few shots, but most of the time they only show close-ups of their slimy faces because it's obvious they don't have the budget to do anything with them. And in fact, when you see one of the security personnel in this tourist spa shooting at one of these creatures in the hallway, you don't actually see that. You see him shooting into a dark hallway, and you see close-ups of their faces, and then it kind of cuts back and forth between that. But you never once see somebody shooting directly at these creatures and the shots from the laser rifle doing anything to the creatures. It's very superficial, done with editing, and you can tell they just don't have any budget whatsoever. I don't know what the real budget is, but it wasn't used in this show. This show was like put together on the most minimal shoestring they could possibly muster. Why is the BBC allowing this garbage to get past the I have an idea stage? It's got to be the message, right? The writing is rubbish, and this episode must go down as one of the worst ever Doctor Who episodes. Along with every episode this cretin Whittaker has appeared in, can't someone just write a good sci-fi story where the Doctor goes on her own and does stuff that does not involve stick-waving idiots talking to herself or embarrassing what went before by shouting out random sentences, as with her 7 grandmas? But sadly, that won't happen, and we are stuck with no laugh comedy show. Let's take a look at my little list and see if I forgot anything. Yeah, Saturday morning cartoon logic. The daughter character, Bella, she wants to blow up and kill everybody in this resort simply because her mom ignored her and wasn't keeping in contact with her, and her mom worked there as the head of security. So yeah, that's a believable reason why she would bring bombs there and want to kill everybody. And she's supposed to be a likable romantic thing with the character of Ryan. Um, wow, this is complete nonsense. What else is on my list? The engineer's kid knows more than the engineer. Yeah, mentioned that already. The preaching about global warming that went on and on at the end, despite having the whole messaging throughout that we already got the point on. Yeah, the Doctor magically knew that Bella was the cause of everything and that she had the bombs, and nobody told her this. She had no way to get this information, yet at the end of the episode, when one of the bombs goes off, she's just all okay with it, like she knew what was going on. But at no point in the story, and I rewound it to make sure that I didn't miss anything, at no point in the story did the Doctor actually get information from anybody that Bella had bombs or that Bella had done all this, that had caused all this problem to happen at the spa. But yet somehow she knew by the end of it. It makes no damn logical sense. It's almost like we have scenes that have been cut out of this that would have shown that. But it's a complete fail, and that's a fail on the director, right? Because this is a plot that makes absolutely no sense. Yeah, the Doctor had no plan, and when she did do something against the monsters, it didn't have anything to do with the plot, and it didn't accomplish anything. And in fact, every action that Doctor Who took in this episode did not have anything to do with the plot. It didn't move the plot forward. It had no consequence. It was just a diversion. Everything in this thing was like disconnected scenes that didn't add up to anything, just so that you could get to the end and have the big monologue about preaching about the environment and whatnot. Basically, they're saying if we don't do something about the environment, the whole earth will become dead and it'll be covered by carbon dioxide and all the humans will turn into slimy monsters, and we better do something. We better do something right now. Right now, people. Do you realize right now? I don't want to be a slimy monster. And yet, the BBC, they must know what they're talking about, right? They're telling me this is what's going to happen. After all, they're experts in photosynthesis and stuff now, too, right? No. So anyway, what was my last thing on my list? Yeah, only the women and children are knowledgeable and can make decisions and know anything, and they're the authorities. And in fact, in this, it's actually shown that it's a woman giving the male security personnel their orders, and it's the woman throwing the guns to the males and loading and cocking the weapons for them and whatnot. She's the badass. She's the big decider. Yeah, okay. Well, we got that in Spyfall 1 and 2 as well, and it looks like that's the way this whole thing is going to be. That's my judgment on it, and people tell me that's how season 11 was. It's not just that Doctor Who was replaced by a woman, but that actually every damn character that's going to be relevant to any kind of plot point in this thing from now on has to be a woman, all done by a woman, and the men are just incompetent. And for some reason, the little kids have to be shown as really super smart. I'm not sure what that message is. Maybe that's a message that was lost on me, but I definitely get the point that the women are the ones that are the deciders and the authority figures, and they're the only ones capable of moving the plot forward or bringing the plot to a resolution. So it's definitely wokeness. That's what we call wokeness in the US, and that may or may not be what they call wokeness in Britain, but it's what I call wokeness. 5 out of 10. Another episode where something just doesn't feel right. Okay, not just something. 2 out of 10. Dr. Woke exterminates more viewers. Something isn't right with this show. That's obvious by the number of people switching off. But to lose almost 600,000 audience numbers over 2 episodes is surely alarming enough to alert the BBC hierarchy. Awful from start to finish, with their constant agenda message thrust unpalatably down the viewers' throats. I had been an advocate of making the Doctor female. It had become stale and needed change. Jodie is trying but failing, as are the writers and producers. Sunday evenings are a perfect time slot. Think about what most people do. They sit down and watch television for the show to sink to just over 4 million watchers. I fear it won't be long now. Well, obviously, it's the messaging, right? Maybe they're just going to make this a loss leader, a loss leader where you're willing to sell a product from a store at a loss just to get people into the store. Maybe they're willing to let Doctor Who become a woke bonanza, like to totally descend into woke hell, as it were. And it doesn't matter if anybody watches, as long as people get the message that the BBC is on the woke train. I mean, I don't know how that works. 1 out of 10, what a dump. 1 out of 10, more agendas, meh. 6 out of 10, some good ideas, but ultimately a bit disappointing. 1 out of 10, what? 3 out of 10, Dr. Y. 7 out of 10, wow, that's the highest I've seen so far. Good concept, mixed execution. Yeah, if you consider a plot that's complete nonsense to be mixed, okay. 7 out of 10, it is not a first star, and it is not the worst thing on TV. It probably isn't the worst thing on TV, but it's one of the worst that I've seen. 8 out of 10, why all the hate? 7 out of 10, Orphan 55, blah, blah, blah. 7 out of 10, not as bad as people say. 2 out of 10, very disappointing. So there are people that enjoy the wokeness, but most people don't, apparently, because the numbers keep dropping on the ratings, on the viewership. So I don't know. I might check back in and see if it gets worse, see if it drops below an actual, 4 out of 10 on IMDb, and see if this 7% stays in the single digits all through season 12. I'll keep an eye on it. Now, something very strange happens, and all of a sudden, this audience score bumps up to like out of rotten territory, or even goes up to like 50% or whatnot. I'll come back and have something to investigate here, something to talk about, but I'm predicting it'll just stay in the single digits. And yeah, maybe somebody will keep resetting it, whether it's a hacker or it's like Rotten Tomatoes, because I think, if you reset this, it's probably going to go right back to 6 or 7% from what I'm seeing. So good luck with that. But in any case, I've judged that it's rotten. I won't continue Doctor Who season 12. I will check in on it, but that's going to be it for me, and I will see you on the next episode of Rotten Reviews.